The Late Evening News, written by Hack Shuck. Everyone watched the late evening news. I can still recall the grim fascination on my father's face as he'd sit, gripping a beer in each hand and watching the names scroll slowly up the screen, like movie credits. The names of the next 24 hours heroes. The anchorman didn't read the names aloud, allegedly for fear of sounding slightly apprehensive or even afraid. The previous anchor had perhaps made that fatal mistake until he saw his own name on the autocue. Nobody really knew for sure. All we were fed was propaganda. Kids stayed up late. Families gathered around the television set, watching what was more or less mandatory, I guess. We'd see the previous day's events in our glorious nation's capital. Store shelves full of wondrous goodies. Grinning kids with mouths full of shining white teeth. Rockets shooting for Mars and beyond. Then there would be a weather report, always sunny, and sports, somehow always a success for every team, and a light-hearted home video clip, perhaps of a cat playing the piano. Then the list of the next day's dead, and the screaming would start. Gunshots would punctuate the night. Sirens usually signaled a suicide or two. Sometimes someone would jump from a window and you'd even hear the splatter or the splintering of spines. I remember the night my father's name scrolled up. He laughed maniacally and downed both of his beers with a belch before hanging himself from the broken old ceiling fan using his belt. The military escort arrived the next morning. He seemed bitterly disappointed to see my father swinging a little in the soft April breeze. He grudgingly took my father away, muttering about another fucking coward, and barely acknowledging my existence. I was mature for my age, and was used to making breakfast, so I was okay. I drank my maize shake and popped my protein pills and made my way down to the old schoolhouse, where my pals and I always climbed up onto the dilapidated roof to get a clear view of the launch pad. Men, women, and increasingly children were then led shakily toward the nose cones of the rockets constructed yesterday, usually numbering 30 or 40. It was an uneducated guess as the number of suicides varied. A brass band gave them a cacophonous send-off. As soon as each rocket was ready, it shot off, faster than the eye could see. Cold fusion engines running silently as the grave, with each rocket's kamikaze pilot steering their warheads towards the attack fleet, rapidly amassing throughout our solar system. It was something to do with the enemy tech being able to neutralize or confuse our AI. That's why flesh and blood was required. We'd see dazzling flashes in the sky and imagine the impacts of those amateur astronauts. That one was my mum, I told myself. That one was my brother. Heroes, both. Then, there wasn't much else for the kid to do, except wait for the late evening news.
The Weatherman Was Crying, written by Ashura 5000. When the forests burned, he had remained steadfast. Yes, this is bad, but it's not the end times. It'll be fine. We can still turn it around. Today's forecast is... When the oceans boiled, he had remained resilient. Who eats fish anyway? I certainly don't. Anyway, today's forecast is... When the oceans rose and whole civilizations were wiped away, he had remained optimistic. Let's be real. A global population loss of 50% seems bad. Sure, I get that. But that's a lot less people to damage the planet now, so you know. Let's look at this as a silver lining, yeah? Anyway, today's forecast is... When the oxygen began to deplete and society began to crumble, he wore an oxygen mask and continued, regardless.
Not to get too political, but maybe we should listen to the scientists now. Today's forecast is...
When the rich fled to the stars, promising to find a new world, he suspected it was a lie, but repeated it to give hope. They'll be back. Have faith. Today's forecast is... When he was moved to a government bunker, ran by an insurrection group as the strongest hurricanes ravaged the cities, he tried to forget about the nuclear power plants that had exploded. How's everyone's rations tasting? Good, right? Today's forecast is... When they received news that the spacecraft had exploded before even reaching the moon, he felt strangely at peace. Whilst it's a shame, don't forget the real fight was always going to be here at home. Anyway, today's forecast is... When he learned that the other bunkers were gone, he spoke to those that remained. Who's beginning to think we can still make it through this? I've had ideas. If we all go vegan, we can... Huh? We aren't doing that? Okay. Well, today's forecast is... When he learned that this would be his last broadcast, he tried to stay strong, but a single tear descended his cheek. And that was the forecast. Don't worry. I'll be back tomorrow for more. But until then, stay safe, everyone. Good night.